Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for August 24th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Liana. How you doing, Liana?
Taran, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Is your microphone running?
Maybe? I don't know.
Well, then you should go and catch it if it is. Prank week. Take that. Ha, you've been pranked. Send it.
Oh, no!
Yeah, I thought of this terrible idea on Friday and I was like, I have to do it. Like I don't care.
I got pranked, guys!
Oh, prank week.
Oh, man!
What? It's crazy.
Man, the audience voting you as prankster really stuck it to me, huh?
I know. Thanks, America. Yeah.
All right, we've got to talk about some of these prank stuff things. All right. We're here to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big With 21 live feeds. It was day 66 in the house, and the America's Prankster twist was revealed to the house. In the early morning, we caught that a little bit at the tail end of yesterday's update. And they were told that America would be voting on a prankster. That prankster would get to choose one of the nominations, and that they would be able to replace that nomination if that person came down off the block. So they know all of basically how this is going to work, except for who, of course, is the person who won the prankster twist. I believe how this worked for them is that I think they chose two people each. One is their first priority. One would be their backup plan, and so then that's how things were nominated. I think that's how it worked.
Yeah, so essentially a good portion of yesterday was spent with the house guests all on the couches, just kind of waiting to be called into the DR one at a time to find out whether or not they received the power. And I would agree with you. It does seem like that they had to list two people because when they went to nominations, I mean, it was pretty quick. Like, I can't imagine that they would have called them in, then had them make a decision. So I have to believe you that that's probably the way that it unfolded.
Yeah, because Holly mentioned, like, oh, I wonder, or I think Jackson too at one point was like, oh, but what if you weren't even the second, or what if you weren't even the primary choice? What if you were just the backup? So I think that's how they got around the fact that they can't obviously coordinate, the two nominations. So that's how it worked. Holly is going to begin her one-on-one conversations from this point forward. She talks to Jess for a long time, of course. And basically it's just, hey, I'm getting Nick out. And Jess is like, yay, we're getting Nick out. That was basically what I got from that.
Yeah, I'm trying to see from my notes. There's, Jess tells Holly she considers her an ally. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes. Holly talks to Nick, and he tells her that hey, I'm on board with you. That's I'm ready to do whatever you want. I hope this power doesn't screw you up, because that's not what I would want. You know what? If God forbid Jackson goes on the block, that would be terrible. That's so unfair. I would use the veto to take Jackson down. That's what I would do, because I think it's not fair that Jackson. I would take Jackson down. Also, just to let you know, Christy did approach me before the HOH competition, and we talked about making peace and all that stuff. It's the same story that Christy told Holly as well. This is going to matter a little bit later. After Nick leaves, Holly's just like, trustworthy Nick. Didn't believe him.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, well, it is what it is when she's talking to him, so you can tell that she's like definitely not on board with whatever Nick is trying to sell. But it did seem like most of the pitches before the prankster whole thing happened was essentially like, well, I'm not going to put up Jackson, and like, if I win the veto, like, I'll talk to you about it. So it was like everybody pretty much said the same thing, Nick included.
Right. And obviously the idea here is that, hey, if you don't nominate me, if Jackson ends up on the block, I will take him down. But obviously I can't take him down if I'm nominated. I'd have to take myself down. So if I'm off the block, that means one more person fighting in the veto to take Jackson down.
See what an asset I am. I'm just so I'm just so selfish in this game, selfless in this game. Wait, sorry, no, that's
Yeah.
Jackson's line. Yeah.
I just can't believe that the words coming out of my mouth happen to make a scenario where you don't want to put me on the block. I mean, that's what a coincidence.
I mean, yeah, I would definitely do that. Just oh wait, but if I'm on the block, oh I can't.
Oh,
So
man.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was that conversation.
Didn't work. Holly's gonna talk to Christy, and Holly's gonna go to Christy, and she's like, you know, after thinking about it last night, you know how I told you I was putting you on the block? Getting to think about it, I came to regret that decision. I actually didn't want to put you on the block. I don't know why I was thinking that at all. Oh, and I only happen to have one nomination now, so that's gonna be Nick. Don't worry about you. I was never even going to put you on the block. That was never I totally changed my mind afterwards, so definitely no you on the block from me at all.
Yeah, this is so funny, especially because Holly is so mad at Christy for like recanting on the deal and being like, no, 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 oh, well, you have to go through with it. And then Holly, meanwhile, is totally backtracking here, being like, oh my God, I don't have to make another nomination. Like, I will pretend that I was never, ever going to put Christy up. Of course, never.
Yeah, she says later to Jackson, she's like, I'm so mad at myself for telling her before, because wouldn't have had to. And that's what I said yesterday. I was like, man, she might get away with not even having to reveal to Christy that she would have gone on the block, but she went and told her.
Yeah, she kind of had two ways to do it that I think would have been okay. One, not say anything. I mean, not that she knew that the prankster twist potentially was going to happen, but either don't say anything or do the straight up, this is the deal that we made. We're just following through with the deal, right? This is just, of course, what's going to happen. Like none of this sort of half measure. So anyway, yeah, Justice or Holly is really like kicking herself about that.
Yeah, and this annoys me too because it's only going to further encourage them to not talk any strategy Thursday night and to wait until Friday, because what if there's a twist that impacts it?
Another prank.
Oh man. All right, so Holly's gonna talk to Cliff. They talk about how she's just gonna nominate Nick now. She only has one nomination. It's gonna be Nick probably. Cliff says that he has his own targets, and he has two targets and one person that he would nominate as a pawn. I think that Cliff thought that he was gonna get the prankster power. We thought Cliff was gonna get the prankster power. Spoilers for just a little bit further into the update, he does not get the prankster power. But I think this was Cliff trying to set up the fact that, okay, if I get it, I'm targeting Tommy. And when I target Tommy or Christy, but primarily Tommy, I need to let them know that, like, I have my own target here. Like, this is him setting up that I might not go your way this week. I might have to go and target Tommy this week. Like, I have my own targets, not just people I would put on the block. And so I think this is him setting that up.
Yeah, this was I really love this conversation from Cliff, especially the other conversations are just all so boring. Cliff like is, I don't know if it's the engineer in him, but speaks with like he speaks very clearly about what it is, even though it is still subtle. He's still more direct about the situation, and I guess maybe is much more practical about it because he is just setting up like, look, this is the situation that we could have. You know, if I end up getting this, there are people that I would be interested in targeting. And so he's still subtle, but at the same time, very straightforward about it. And I really like that. And unfortunately for Cliff, this doesn't actually do anything, but good work if it had.
So he also mentions that he would like for them all to get to the final four together, himself, Nicole, Jackson, and Holly. But he doesn't want to make anything official because that's how people get burned in this house. Nobody has made any alliances since the six shooters went the way of the I don't know, Faute, I guess.
Well, I can imagine Jez then being the next week. There was a final 9, a final 8, a final 6, a final 4, and I was just not part of it. So I think they want to avoid that, I guess.
Yeah. But Holly loves the idea in general. She agrees, like, nothing, no name, no nothing like that, but we're working together, yes. Then we see Nick talking to the cameras on his way to the bathroom. Nick says, thank you. Effing thank you, America. I effing love you. Oh, thank you so much. I needed this one. Oh, boy. Oh, you love it when I hump Tommy, don't you? You love the foot stuff. You love the effins. You love the sniffles. Oh, it's so good. Thank you.
I don't remember that quote specifically.
I'm pretty sure he said that.
I think that was what at least he was interpreting with what America has done. Yes, Nick is the prankster this week. I think, to quote Jackson, the live feeders plan and the casuals laugh, because I think that's definitely what happened here. I mean, I have been on the Facebook page for Big Brother, for the B&B, talking to the casuals. They hate Christy. Hate Christy. And because of this whole Taco Tuesday situation, they saw Nick as the person who will go after Christy. And that's why I think Nick won the prankster.
Yes, I agree. I think it immediately reminded me, and I did not think this would happen because I just didn't feel I underestimated the Big Brother Canada 6 effect. In Big Brother Canada 6, there was another hated female power player in the house, Kayla, and Kayla was HOH, and she had a target, and she was talking about targeting that person, and the edit right before a vote that was about to save somebody really played up the fact that Kayla is a villain and that this person is their target or her target, and then the viewers saved the person from Kayla, which actually was amazing for Kayla's game because she was making a massive mistake in targeting that person. It gave her the ability to instead target the fan favorite that season and send her home instead. And the audience was like, wait a minute, what did we just do?
Yeah, and it was all because of the edit from the one episode. And so that's what we're seeing here, I think. The edit from this one episode, the Taco Tuesday nonsense, that's what's caused this.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think similarly to Big Brother Canada 6, not quite as devastating, probably, but this could easily backfire in a massive way. Nick having the power, I think, makes it less likely that Christy leaves this week. I think that if Cliff or Nicole had it, they would probably target Tommy first. But if Tommy won the veto, I think that Christy would go because they would feel a lot more comfortable voting Christy out over Nick or whoever. But also, it opens the door for Jackson to go home this week. Whether or not, and we'll get to who Nick nominates, but the option is still there for Jackson to go on the block next to Nick, and Jackson could easily go home next to Nick. And if Nick was playing this right, then Jackson would be going home, but we're going to talk about that too. But if Jackson goes home, guess who benefits the most from Jackson going home?
Oh, Christy?
Her name starts with Christy.
Yeah. Oop, and I oop, like, oh no, this totally might backfire. I mean, for now, things are going accordingly to the casuals plan when we talk about it. But yeah, this has the potential to be a disaster in a fun way, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes. Which, again, not to say that that there aren't people that voted for Nick because they like Nick or because they wanted something else to happen or they don't mind that Jackson goes. But for those I think, casual viewers that don't really understand the dynamics of the feeds, voting for Nick as a way to be like, stick it to Christy, they opened the door for Christy to get out of this week in a really, really nice way.
A Pandora's box, if you will.
Yes. So that's Nick has the power. The feeds are going to go down for a table change.
The small table. Half the house guests are gone, so more room for pie smashing.
Yes. So Holly and Jackson are going to talk, and Holly says she is going to put up Nick now that she only has that one nomination. Jackson says, so what I'm thinking is, if I get the prankster, I should nominate myself, because then I guarantee myself a spot in the veto and nobody would know it was me.
He's just full of good ideas. I love it. Love it.
I would rather live on the block than die as the prankster off the block.
Okay, you know what, Taran? We're playing cribbage, not crazy eights, all right? This is the nonsense that we're doing here. Yeah, when I heard this, it's like, wait, I had to go back to listen to it again. It's like, did he really just suggest to put himself up as the prankster for reasons? Yeah.
I almost wish Jackson got it.
Just to see that would be amazing.
So send himself home.
Send himself home. No, not only that, send himself home on Holly's HOH. Like, that is even better.
Nah, that's playing yourself right there.
Yeah, call DJ Khaled. You played yourself.
So that's Jackson's idea. My idea for this twist, and I talked about it a little bit on Twitter and on Twitch, that my idea was they should have told everyone in the house, excluding Holly, of course, that they were the prankster. On these very, very strict instructions that they cannot tell anybody, they can't even hint at anybody. If anybody has any idea that they have the power, they will lose the power and end up on the block themselves. Very, very strict rules, and have a short period of time before the nomination ceremony after they tell them anyway, so that they have to keep it a secret. And if they don't, then whatever, then the prank fails. But then they all think that they're the prankster. And then we get a montage in the episode where they're all being told that they're oh, thank you, America. I knew you loved me. Oh, thank you so much. This is going to be so good. I can't wait to see Jackson's face when he goes on the block. I can't wait to see Christy's face when she goes on the block. Oh, thank you so much, America. All of these people so full of themselves. And then they get to the nomination ceremony, and there's only one real prankster, and that person will just see the person they nominated on the board, and they'll be like, yeah, exactly. But everybody else will be like,
wait a second,
what? Oh, you just got pranked!
Yeah, it's like Inception prank. It's a prank within a prank. Oh, wow. That might just be better than is your microphone running prank. Maybe. Just maybe. Yeah, that would actually be really good. I would love that. It would be funny though if, like, okay, let's say two people picked the same person and then if they both think, they're like, oh, well, we're both America's prankster. Exactly,
which could still be pretty funny. So they're not doing that though. Jackson is talking to Holly some more. Holly wants to see. They still want to see either Christy or Nick leave. So that's, So Holly's like, well, maybe if you won, did you win? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Well, I would want Christy on the block. They talk about the conflict in the stories told to them by Christy and Nick. That basically Christy is claiming that Nick came to her and was like, hey, well, let's work together. I'm going to offer you safety, effing all that stuff. And Christy was like, excuse me? No, I don't like you and I would never accept safety and I'm targeting you, sir. And Nick is saying that they both had a conversation where they were like, hey, let's maybe keep each other safe in this HOH competition. And they're like, I think Christy's sounds more believable.
Wait, what gives you that impression? The fact that they had a screaming blow up fight and then all came together? I don't know, but Holly's paranoia about the whole did they plan this thing? That also is something to think about.
But so basically Jackson wants to blow this up. He wants them to get into a fight about this and maybe the truth will be revealed. As truth often does get revealed in blow-ups.
Yeah, bro, cuz.
Yeah. it's maybe not revealed, but manifested.
We're gonna manifest the truth, bro. Okay, that's what we're gonna do in this. Yeah, this was totally Jackson's idea to just like, look, put them together, and then say, look, I heard this from you, Nick. I heard this from you, Christy. What's up? And just sort of like set this whole thing in motion. So that was Jackson's plan earlier in the day.
They also talk about Cliff and how Cliff said that he had 2 targets. Holly thinks that those targets are Nick and Tommy. Close. They both say that they love Tommy and would never target him themselves. Even in later game, like they could never target Tommy. So, Cliff can if he wants to. They're not going to stop him, but they are not going to.
Yeah, I think at some point Holly talks about her ideal boot order, and Tommy is the last of the four out of Jackson, Holly, Nicole, and Cliff. So, like, she clearly wants to keep him around at least at the moment until like the final five.
Yes, Tommy has somehow continued to just completely keep Jackson and Holly in the dark about the fact that he's been targeting them for about 2 weeks now. And if they had their way, they would take Tommy all the way down to at least final five, and then if they won, who knows from that point forward, he might still be able to be like, no, they're a duo, you've got to take them out. So watch out for that relationship, because it's pretty crazy that he just completely has them wool over their eyes. Like, they're gonna talk later in the night, like they're from their perspective, they have Christy and Tommy as a final four, and they have Nicole and Cliff as a final four, and they don't really like Christy, but they do love Tommy, and they hate lying to Tommy. They wish it was a real final four, but they have to. It's $500,000, so they have to lie and pretend that they're also in that final four. But they hate lying to Tommy, and they'll have to really, figure it out when the time comes.
That's really hard. It's because when you look at Tommy, you see home. So,
What?
That's why. When you look at Tommy, you see home.
All right, we're not going to keep going. So I don't know what magical powers Tommy has over those two, but they seem completely snowed there. Nick, Nicole, and Tommy are going to chat a little bit. Nick is, I think, trying to work out what he's doing. He's like, yeah, I mean, it would be unfair for Jackson to go up on Holly's HOH, right? Like, nobody would do that, right? Like, I wouldn't do that. And Tommy's like, no, I don't think that'll happen. He's like, okay, right. So that would, I mean, if I had the power, that would leave me with two options, right? And then they don't respond. They're talking about something else. He's like, so that would leave me with two options, right? They're like, yeah, I guess so. They're like, they're not.
Yeah, they're like not playing along, and Nick is trying to pretend like he doesn't have it, but he's like, just like theoretically, like, if I were gonna go up next to somebody, who do you think I could beat? Is it about like another target that would go out, or do I want to go up someone I can beat in the veto? Like, I don't know. I mean, I just like hypothetically, like, I don't know what would you guys think?
So when I learned that Nick got the power, my immediate thought was, okay, like, he can keep himself off the block. Easy. All he needs to do is go to Holly. I don't know if they're allowed to say that they have the power, but plenty of people have not been allowed to say they have a power in the past in Big Brother, and they have found ways to get around that. Cut to Mike Boogie talking to Chicken George. Theoretically, if somebody had a power, they could theoretically change your nominations. So theoretically, you should do this. Like, that was very blatant. You don't even need to be that blatant. All Nick needs to do, in my opinion, is go to Holly and be like, so, if I were to have a power, or if somebody were to have a power, I feel like, I don't know. I know that I don't want Jackson to go on the block. I think that would be unfair. That's not what I want. And I would love to work something out with you to, can we make sure that doesn't happen? If you made a deal to keep me safe this week and not nominate me, then I would absolutely want to return the favor and make sure that we worked something out in terms of where this prankster nomination might go. Who maybe I can try and influence whoever has it. I don't know about anything like that. You hear what I'm saying, Holly?
Yeah, he's doing the theoretical conversations with the wrong people. Like, not the people in power that he should be talking to.
Theoretically, who would you want me to put on the block if I were the prankster and you didn't put me on the block and we made some kind of arrangement? Theoretically, if I were the prankster.
Yeah, just theoretically, obviously. But I wanted to ask you, when do you think Nick actually made his picks for nominations? Because all of this happened really quickly. Nominations actually happened like relatively early, and they found out about the power like that afternoon, and then nominations happened right after.
So So he talked to Nicole and Tommy here. He actually did go up to find Holly at one point. She wasn't available at the time, and so he went back down, hung out for a little while. Then he was called to the diary room again. I believe that's when he locked in his nominations, and then after that he had a confrontation with Christy, which we'll get to. But really, I feel like it would have been so easy for him if he did have that conversation with Holly to keep himself off the block. I mean, the basics are, look, I'll agree to not put up Jackson if you don't put me on the block. And I think that Holly would have agreed to that, and she would have just put up Christy instead, and that would have been fantastic for Nick, because it really sours her relationship with Christy. It makes her want Christy to go because she just had to betray her. And then, he can put up Jess next to Christy, and if he wants to, he can put up Jackson after that and send Jackson home and betray them, or he can do whatever he wants. Like, he is in a really great spot if he uses this to his advantage. And maybe when we see the episode and we see the card and it is like, if you dare even hint that you have this power and anybody suspects it at all, then you will end up on the block. We can cut him some slack, but I really feel like even under those circumstances, this is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, Lord knows Nick is not my favorite person in the house, and I do not want to give him any credit, but the timing of everything is interesting, because I do wonder if that conversation that he was going to have with Holly before he ends up getting called to the DR, I mean, maybe he should have pushed it more, but, I'm not sure if they gave him a timeline of like, look, you're going to have to make your picks within the next hour. So then he should have like really been hustling to have these conversations,
Yeah,
but maybe he thought he would have more time.
He went up there and like knocked on the door and like poked his head in, and he was like, yeah. And then he went back down and just like hung out in bed and chatted for like another hour or two before getting called to. And he didn't even make a second attempt. So it didn't feel like he had much urgency here. And I'm gonna make that criticism of most people in the house, including Holly for sure, because Holly doesn't make much of an effort to figure out who has the power. She like. Once people have been called into the diary room, Holly should be calling people up one by one again and being like, hey, either do you have the power, or if you had the power, what would you be thinking? And can we come to some arrangement? Like, you should be very concerned that Jackson might go on the block if the wrong person gets this power, and you should be trying to make some kind of deal, or at the very least try to figure out who has it. I've never seen such lack of urgency when it comes to like figuring out who has these things. There was very little speculation. There was no investigation.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. And Holly even complains later in the night about, well, I only talked to people before the prankster, like things. I was like, well, it's a two-way street, right? Like, you're allowed to go talk to them. You don't have to wait for them to come up and talk to you. And it seems like there were only a handful of people that were speculating, like, oh, who do you think it could be? Even after the nominations happened, there seemed to be limited speculation, and like discussion would cut off sort of immediately. Like, Jackson, for some reason, thinks that it's Nicole, and then just like, yep, it's Nicole. The end. Like, there could be no more speculation and no more discussion. It's very weird.
Yeah, maybe they all watched Big Brother Celebrity 2 when Tom Green was like, let's go on a murder mystery and figure out who has this power, and then got in trouble for it. But man, like, there's definitely, you do something, right? Because she did complain, like, nobody came and talked to me. And I only talked to people before, and so now I have no idea.
I mean, they didn't come to talk to me.
There was a long period of time where she was literally just laying in bed, and Jackson was just like, "What's up?" Like, it was a lot of downtime before any of this stuff happened. So they are going to do one thing though. They are going to instigate this confrontation between Christy and Nick. They bring Christy up first, and they tell her what Nick said. Oh, that's a lie! Let's get him in here right now. That's a lie. They talk some more before they bring him up, but they do eventually go and bring Nick up. He's just chilling in bed, not talking to Holly. They bring Nick up, and they hash it out. Unfortunately, this is not Taco Tuesday Part 2.
We were all hoping on Twitter, everybody fire up your feeds. We got Taco Tuesday 2.0. Sad. It was sad because even when Christy was like, "I hate Nick, bring him up here," but then she wants to be civil about the whole thing. Like,
Mm.
no, can you like not be civil right now?
Yeah, they're quibbling over minor details like did you say the word the or a? I don't know. Did you say throw or give? I don't know. Oh man, it's they're kind of like angry talking, but they're mostly like agreeing because
Yeah.
basically here is that Christy is gonna just spout her like BS about the conversation, and Nick is just going to admit to his own part in it and not argue with Christy. So there's still like disagreement between the two of them because Christy's lying and Nick kind of isn't. But Nick's not bothering to call Christy out because he doesn't want to have the thing blow up again. And so it's a lot of like you came to me, Nick. You walked over to me and you started the conversation with me. Yes, I did. I did do that. And I said things to you. Yes, you did say things to me. You said that you would maybe not put me on the block. Yes, I did say that to you. And you nodded your head sometimes. Yes, I did nod my head sometimes, but it did not mean that I was agreeing to you. Okay, that's fair. It was a very strange tone.
Yeah, it was weird. Essentially, Nick is resigned to the fact that he's like not going to be able to win against Christy because Christy is so just relentless with her points. Like he even just admits at one point, like you're really good with your words, all of the words. She has the best words. So it's like, okay, Nick, like what are you even trying to do here? But I think he knows he's going up, and at this point, he has the power. So I think he feels like, oh, I can do something about this, I guess. I don't know. But yeah,
Well,
he was not trying to really fight back.
yeah, and Nick basically says to Holly during this confrontation, look, I know you're putting me on the block, so it's whatever. And Holly's like, yeah. Like he knows that he's going on the block, and he's like he leaves this conversation first. He doesn't say, hey, can I talk to you guys real quick before the noms? No attempt.
No. So good luck, Nick, with this strategy, because I don't know what his plan is here. I mean, I don't know if he's like, well, I already made the nomination, so there's nothing I can do to change it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So Holly does get called for nominations. Holly nominates Nick, and Nick nominates Christy, which I do believe was locked in before that confrontation and was his idea ahead of time. He's going to talk to Nicole and be like, oh, I'm glad whoever the prankster was put Christy next to me because I feel like I might have the votes here because I think that Tommy promised me that he would keep me over Christy. I don't think he promised you this week, Nick. I think that was a Holly to sis promise. And so if I have you and Cliff, then I'm gonna stay. And I'm like, Nick, Tommy, no. Cliff, no. Nicole, maybe.
She says she would be willing to like use the veto on him, even though it would cause like a commotion.
I think she's willing to use the veto, but if he's on the block and the votes aren't there, she's not voting for him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no way, especially with Cliff. You know, like if Cliff, Jackson, and Holly are all saying no, we want Nick out. There's no way.
Yeah, she would be on board if Cliff was on board and the numbers were there.
Yeah.
But she is not somebody that's like gonna go and make this happen. So Nick counting these votes very, very off. Not great. I don't love this. Actually, I do think he has a chance to stay here next to Christy, but those votes are not coming from Tommy, Cliff, and Nicole. Those votes are coming from Jackson, Cliff, and Nicole. The way for Nick to stay against Christy is to convince Jackson and Holly that who could see either of them leave, that, you know what, I'm a little bit more beneficial than Christy is. And so we'll see if he comes around to understanding that if these two end up staying on the block. But as of right now, he is still focusing on the wrong people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, part of his issue is like his inability to read the situation correctly and whether or not he would have the correct votes, because I think he's able to put in the work if he knew the right work that needed to be done. But unfortunately, right now, that's not the case.
Yeah, and again, it's trusting Tommy a little too much. Although I did see a little bit from Nick today that was some of the first anti-Tommy stuff I've heard from him in a very, very long time. We'll get to that. But first, Jackson and Holly are going to talk. They do, as you mentioned, think that Nicole is the prankster. She has no poker face. It's so obvious.
It's so obvious. What a great move. And it was so funny because they're like giving her credit for something that she didn't do.
She needed to do something. She's not had a chance. We're proud of her.
We're just so proud of her. I would love for Nicole to be at the final two, and it would be like, so was the biggest move of your game being the prankster and putting up Christy? She's like, wait, what? That wasn't me.
You know what? Claim it. Go for it.
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah, definitely.
Nick would be like, that's a lie. And she'd be like, oh, are we doing Taco Tuesday again? And then everyone would clap and give her the win unanimously. So Tommy's going to join Jackson Holly. He says he's in a tough spot with the veto. He doesn't know what he would do if he won, that he might want to use it maybe. How would you feel about that? No, you don't want it to be used. Well, I mean, yes, I agree. I would definitely talk to you about it first and consult you and figure it out, Jackson and Holly.
Yeah, Holly obviously wants nominations to stay the same because these are the two people she was going to put up anyway. So good one, Nick. And so, essentially Tommy is just trying to sort of start the conversation if he were to win veto. I mean, because the thing is if it's hide and go veto, like some of the house guests think it is, you don't necessarily know. If you're trying to throw it, sometimes you can't do that. So he's sort of setting the stage for this. But yeah, I mean, they conclude on like, well, he'll consult Holly if he wins.
Basically, he can't win this veto and not use it. These are his two closest allies, and so he's trying to be like, well, let's talk. Let's talk if this happens. And I don't think he wants it to be used too. So like, because he doesn't want either of them to go. And so, he's in kind of a tricky spot. And he's going to try and navigate that throughout the week, I imagine, or at least the next couple of days. Jackson and Holly are also going to go and talk to Cliff. Cliff thinks that Nick might be the prankster. A little bit easier for Cliff to deduce, I think, because of the three people that would put up Christy. It's not him, and Nicole would probably tell him, so it's probably Nick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I guess he's got a little bit more of evidence, but like, why wouldn't Jackson and I don't even know why they wouldn't even consider Nick. I mean, maybe because they think that Nick would then come up and try to have a conversation. I just don't understand why Jackson is so adamant that it's Nicole.
Well, Holly didn't talk to Nicole all day, so clearly.
Well, maybe it's Christy because she would put herself up on the block.
Oh,
and
no.
no one would suspect that it's her.
Secret genius.
Ah.
All right. Cliff asks them what they would want him to do with the veto. They say that they would want to keep things the same. That's what Cliff wants. And so he's like, okay, I'm definitely going to do that then. Gonna listen to you guys. They control the votes this week. He makes sure to point out once again that if the nominations stay the same, they control the votes. So it's great if they stay the same.
Mm-hmm. If they stay the same. So yeah, because you have Jackson, Cliff, and Nicole, and 3 votes. That's all you need.
Yes. Cliff is very good at reminding people to do things that are obvious to them without like blatantly doing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's somehow still straightforward without like too much. Like, yeah, if they stay the same, you just kind of like repeat the phrases over and over again, and maybe eventually it'll stick.
Yeah. Nick and Nicole are going to talk again. This is when he asks her if she would use the veto on him. She says, you know what? Screw it. I'll do it. I'll use the veto on you, Nick. And people are still very like anti the Nick and Nicole relationship, thinking like people still talk about like how Nicole is Nick's puppet, or it's pathetic that Nicole would want to save Nick, but I really don't. Again, last week she went against what Nick wanted under the assumption that Nick would be pissed at her, and she didn't care. And if she saves Nick with the veto, that's Because it's good for her game. Like, it is good for her game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not crazy here, right? Like, Nick being in the game is fantastic for Nicole because he is one of the people that is loyal to her to an extent, especially now with Sis gone. And later in this conversation is what I'm going to be talking about. Nick starts talking about Tommy and how he's starting to get concerned about Tommy. And he already knew that he would lose to Tommy if he took him. He said that to Sis. And so I fully believe that Nick takes Nicole to the final two and would never evict her. And so why would she want him to go home?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think make a good old fashioned pros and cons list. Like, she's going to have to work out what would be the cons of taking Nick off the block, right? I mean, if she thinks that it is in her best interest to appease Jackson and Holly, assuming that they still want Nick out, or you could bring Nick up and then make some sort of deal and say that Christy has to go, put the target on her, take Nick off, and try to get everything to happen. You know, like, lean in, Nicole. You can have it all.
Yeah, and it's like the only way Holly could stop her from doing this is by saying, I'm going to put Cliff up on the block if you do this as the replacement, but that would completely trash their games, and so they're not going to do that. And so they're probably just going to have to be like, well, we don't like this, Nicole, but you gotta play your own game, which is what Jackson advocates all the time. Maybe she loses her spot in the Jackson, Holly, Cliff Final Four, but that's not a good Final Four for her anyway. And it's not like they're going to go after Nicole next week instead of Nick or whoever. So it's, I don't think this is a bad move for her.
Yeah, it definitely upsets the status quo a little bit, but at this point in the game, like, you have to do what's in your best interest. And so if Nicole were to do this, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad move. Although I think that she will have to prepare her allies for what's coming. I mean, if she just gets into the veto meeting and uses this without talking to anybody, that's a bad way to play it. But I think she can do it in a way that really is advantageous for her game.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that she will play it correctly. We've seen that she isn't great at playing things
Jess,
correctly.
And then Jess blows everything up.
But it's one of those situations where it's like people are like, oh, so pathetic, Nicole, saying she'll use the veto on. No, that's not the bad thing. The bad thing is how she inevitably executes it poorly. The move itself, I don't think, is bad.
Okay, good. I'm glad we have the distinction out there.
Yeah. If she were like, it brings me back to when Steve would do things in the house. Like if this was Steve's position right now, he would use the veto on Nick and then afterwards like cry about it and be like, Nick convinced me to do it. I'm so sorry, guys. And then be like,
yeah. Meanwhile,
but that's not what Nicole's going to do. So they continue to talk. Nick asks Nicole who she thinks that he can beat in a vote if Christy comes off the block. And she says Tommy, which is not correct. And Nick says, I don't think that's correct.
Yeah. Nick's like, no, that's not gonna happen. Like, what about someone like Jackson? Because I wouldn't put Tommy if he were up next to me. I do not think I would stay.
Yeah, so he suggests Jackson, and Nicole's like, yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that. That would probably work. And I agree. I think that if Christy comes down, absolutely Jackson should go up. I almost feel like Jackson was a safer play in the first place. I think Jackson is his best shot at staying because if it's him and Jackson on again, his safest play was to talk to Holly first and get himself not on the block in the first place. But apart from that, put up Jackson. The votes can be Christy, Nick, and Jess. That as long as Tommy's able to convince Christy that we need Jackson gone, and it's absolutely beneficial for all three of those people for Jackson to leave, Christy can definitely talk Jess into taking out Jackson. Hey, they're both guys. They both have a final two together. One is certainly bad, but Jackson is more threatening. He can win more competition, so we need to take Jackson out when we have the opportunity. I absolutely think Jackson would go home. And again, this is why I think this, stick it to Christie. Anybody that voted to stick it to Christie really left the door open for a big, big benefit to her game if that could happen. And it does seem like Nick is recognizing that it's a possibility. And if the veto is used on Christie in any way, I do expect that there will be a heavy consideration from Nick to put Jackson on the block, and then a decent chance that Jackson goes home.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought from the confrontation between Christie and Nick that Nick was potentially leaning towards putting up Jackson. So I could see that Jackson would be Nick's second choice if for some reason Christie were to come off the block. But yeah, veto is going to be really, really interesting this week.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's there's a lot of, again, this could really backfire. And if Jackson goes home, then Tommy and Christie are in real good spots there, because they'll have, they'll kind of have Jess still, who will still be targeting probably Nick, and which is great for them. They'll have Nick, who's still loyal to them. They just saved Nick from eviction, and so Nick will be especially loyal to Tommy, and then there'll be Holly, who maybe at that point when Tommy votes out Jackson, she'll realize that she can't trust Tommy, but she doesn't have anywhere else to turn at that point. So where does she go with Cliff and Nicole? She can't even compete in HOH, so it's going to be Cliff and Nicole versus the rest of the house probably. It's not looking good.
Yeah, and I still can't get over what a great job Tommy and Christie have been doing of distancing themselves from one another. I think that really needs to be mentioned. I swear to God, last night when I was watching feeds, I was like, are they on some sort of rotation where it's like if Tommy's allowed in the kitchen, then Christie has to be like somewhere else, and then they just like flip-flop spots, because I think they're doing a great job separating themselves, and so they definitely don't seem like they are a duo.
Yes. So Tommy does say that he is starting to be concerned with Tommy, that he sees him talking with a lot of people. He has a really great social game, and he's not as sure in him as he has been in the past. That he's thinking that, he's wondering if maybe Jackson and Holly have proposed some kind of Final Four with Tommy and Christie. Pretty close there. And so I do think that Nick is starting to sway a little bit away from Tommy and toward Nicole, which is great for Nicole, bad for Tommy. But if they can get Jackson on the block, that kind of reverses everything, and would be really great for them. But that's not the case right now. It's still Nick and Christie, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with the veto.
Yeah, I mean, this is again why I go back to the short timeline. Like if Nick even get a chance to think through it, but also like you mentioned, he was just like chilling for a while. So clearly it's not like he was like, oh my gosh, I have to think about this right now and run through all the scenarios. That's just like not how Nick operates. But given more time, and if the veto is used, then maybe the scenarios might be fleshed out, and we could see something else happen.
Yes. All right. So Nick also then goes to talk to Jackson. He wants to clarify some things. He says, basically, look, I can't win an argument with Christie. I can't. I can't win an argument with her. So let me tell you my side of things here on my own. I did go to her, but she had been talking with me, and we talked about maybe we would be okay if it came down to the two of us, which one of us won. That I told her she was safe, and of course, dude, she was involved in that conversation. You think, why would I promise her safety if she was telling me that she was no, I don't want it, and I'm going to put you on the block, and then me be like, okay, but I'm still promising you safety. That doesn't make any sense, bro. Why would I do that? I'm not going to, it doesn't make any sense. She also mentioned that she talked to somebody else about it, and I'm not going to name that person's name, but she was definitely talking, bro. And this is why I think he's starting to question Tommy a little bit, because, and we didn't see this conversation, so we don't know the details. But we know that Christie planned on doing a conversation like this. So that's why I'm saying Christie is very, very likely lying, not to mention the fact that her version of the story makes no sense at all anyway. Christie talked to Tommy about essentially brokering some kind of peace with Nick. And so we know that that conversation actually did happen right before the HOH. And it seems as though Christy did invoke Tommy's name in that discussion. Hey, I was talking to Tommy and I was thinking that maybe we can make some kind of arrangement and maybe not have to target each other. Nick was all about that. He was like, we don't have to target each other. Let's, if you want to win the HOH, if I want to win the HOH, I will keep you safe, so on and so forth. And so Nick, I think, is like, Tommy's talking a lot with Christy. He's being left off the block still with Jackson and Holly. I wonder if there's some kind of deal going on there. I think he's getting a little bit sketched out about that. But this is what he's telling to Jackson. He's not willing to drop Tommy's name, but he does imply that there was another person involved and that this was a mutual conversation, not just him saying to Christy, I'm going to keep you safe, and her saying, no thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, this is good work from Nick, if only Jackson was listening a little bit more. It was
great work from Nick, except Jackson doesn't buy any of it.
Because Jackson just keeps deflecting and saying, well, that's just what Holly told me, bro. Like, I know, whatever. And just like, he's listening, but he's not comprehending.
Nick is unable to manifest the truth here in a convincing way, and so Jackson does not buy it. Jackson's actually going to not even wait until him and Holly are alone to tell her about it. He's going to tell her about it in front of Tommy and Christy. That hey, Nick came to me and said that she was still part of all this stuff, and that she was offering him things, and that it was a mutual conversation, and he even mentioned that she brought up somebody else's name and that somebody else was involved, but he didn't want to say that person's name. And Tommy's just sitting there like, and Christy's playing very dumb. Christy's like, another person's name? What does that even mean? How does that even make any sense at all? Oh my God, this is, you know what? This is typical. Typical. Why didn't he say any of this when I was in the room? This doesn't make any sense. This is just nonsense at this point. It doesn't even make any logical sense at all.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you could, even before Christy starts to hammer this point home, like Jackson wasn't buying it anyway, so like this is just then continues to affirm how Jackson, and I assume then Holly, also felt about this situation of just burying Nick deeper and deeper, even though Nick is really onto something.
So that's how that went down. They talk some more about like who they think the prankster is. From Tommy's point of view, it's either Cliff, Nicole, or Nick. He doesn't think it's Cliff. Neither does Jackson. They believe Cliff when he says he doesn't have it. He's not a liar. So it probably is either Nicole or Nick. Tommy is still concerned, though, that if it is one of them, and he does say, you never know. So I am still concerned that I might go up on the block if Christy comes down. If it's Cliff or Nicole, especially, it could absolutely be Nicole, and that's what Jackson thinks. So he's concerned that he might go up on the block. Jackson says, well, I mean, if I go on the block, then we'll know for sure it's Nick. Just like this conversation between Jackson, Holly, Tommy, and Christy in the bathroom last night was just like riddled with terrible gameplay. Between Jackson telling Christy and Tommy about the conversation he had with Nick, and Tommy's gonna make a mistake later on. The way that Christy denied these things was so obvious, but everybody gets away with all of their bad gameplay here. But man, it was bad. Jackson saying, if I go on the block, that guarantees that it's Nick that has the power, meaning there's no way Nicole or Cliff would ever put me on the block. Whoa, that's obvious.
Yeah, that should be a red flag. I don't know. It seemed like they sort of came to this agreement that's like, okay, we're all going to do really bad in this conversation, but there's going to be no ramifications afterwards. Like, let's just all have a bad night of gameplay.
And Tommy and Christy are like, oh no, Nick loves you. He would never put you on the block. You're up against Nick.
Yeah, and you're missing the other part of this too.
Yeah.
Listen to the subtext of what it means. If it definitely has to be Nick, then what does that say about the other two people that it might be?
Right. And then Tommy goes on to be like, so I really would appreciate if any of you picked me to play in the veto. I really want to play. And then obviously, Christy, I'll take you down. And that'll be great because then we'll confirm who has the power because it'll be obvious who has the power based on who goes on the block. And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, oh, you know what? Because Jackson's face during that was like, excuse me. 5 minutes later, Tommy's like, oh, you know what? I just realized that I was saying I would use the veto on Christy, but that would put you in danger. So I definitely, we talk about it. So sorry about that.
Yeah, again, like, oh no, I didn't mean that. Oh, I didn't mean that.
Like, what a mistake that was.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't know if it's all the pies in the house.
Too many pies.
Or what. But yeah, something really sparked a bout of bad gameplay.
Yeah. Jackson and Holly are later going to talk about it. Like, what was up with Tommy saying that he was going to use the veto like that? He said he was going to consult us. But you know what? It's good, though, because obviously they're not onto us being close with Nicole and Cliff. That's great. And, we just hate lying to Tommy. We just hate it. We love him so much. We could never betray him.
Oh, so sweet.
So I don't know how any of them got away with any of that.
I don't know.
Cliff checks in with them again at one point as well, and they talk about the veto. Cliff assumes he's not going to be chosen to play because everybody knows that he's not going to use it. He tells Nick he won't use it, and so they'll probably choose him as the host, but no, they won't because it's going to be Zingbot.
Which I'm very excited for. I'm excited for the zings. Yeah. So I hope that, I don't know, Holly gets called Beth. I think there are just so many wonderful things. Something about, somebody's aunt. I don't know.
So that's basically what we had. Tommy did talk with Nick for a while late, and they went to bed pretty early. They were talking for a while. Tommy did hint that, like, Cliff or Jackson up on the block next to Nick, might help keep Nick safe. Not Cliff, but definitely Jackson. So we'll see. We'll see where things go. Obviously, a lot is going to come down to this veto competition, and it's Zingbot, so I expect the feeds to be down extra long today by themselves, and then if it's Zingbot plus hide and seek veto, then they'll be down like all day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I should go run errands today.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anything else you wanted to bring up, Liana?
No, I don't think so. It was overall for the twist. Coming into the game, it was a pretty uneventful day overall. Which
the nominations
weird.
Were the same as what they were gonna be, basically.
Right. So I don't know what I was expecting, but prank week really starting off with a bang.
Those pranks, there were more pies to the face. Yeah, Nicole really nailed Jackson with one.
That was so you can hear it. She hits him real hard. It was wonderful.
So. We'll see. Lots still to be determined heading into tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern to update you on everything that happens today on the Big Brother 21 live feeds. Might not be a lot because they might be down for a long time, but we will know a lot more about the direction of the week once we know who wins the veto. So tune in tomorrow, and then of course tomorrow night we will be back to recap the Sunday night episode of Big Brother 21, where we will see all this prankster stuff that we just talked about. So
we'll get to figure out how the nominations worked, which will be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how much we can blame Nick for not talking to Holly.
Right, exactly.
How much did they really drop that hammer down on his head? Because unless he had to sign his soul away under strict terms that he would never even remotely, because
Christy's sister, perhaps.
The way that Nick talked to Nicole and Tommy about it was all he needed when it came to Holly. So if he was allowed to do that, then he was allowed to talk to Holly to that extent, and he could have kept himself off the block as far as I'm concerned. So missed opportunity there from Nick. I'm still I don't even like I'm fine with Nick being on the block. I'm just annoyed at the missed opportunity for gameplay. I'm just like, Nick, what are you doing?
I know. He's like, manifest your safety, bro.
Manifest your safety. I don't even care. I don't care if you're safe or not, but just do the thing that makes sense, man.
Yeah, you were given this opportunity by America, damn it. Like, go do something with it. Stop being a disappointment.
All right. So, yeah, so Sofakin says, Taran, you assume Holly would believe him. Well, yeah, she would. She already thinks he has the power. Jackson really thinks it's Nicole. Holly was thinking, especially before the nominations, she was like, I think it's Nick. I think Nick is going to get it. If Nick came up to her and nobody else did, and he was like, so theoretically, if I had the power, she would 100% believe him, as far as I'm concerned.
And like Cliff also floated the idea, like, well, I could see we're the ones in power. They want to pick someone on the other side. How about Nick? So yeah, I mean, it's not like this is a new idea or new concept that Nick could be the one that gets it. So
yeah, and in worst case, he goes up to her and she's like, oh, maybe I don't believe him. Let me go ask Nicole and Cliff. Do you guys have the? No, definitely we don't have the power. Jackson, you sure you don't have it? No, I don't have it. Tommy, do you have it? Nope, definitely not. Christy, you? Nope.
Yeah.
When everyone else is denying it adamantly, like I really like this is not rocket science here. So that's what we have for you. That's what we have here. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. You can find me on Twitter @ArmstrongTaran. Liana, where can people find you?
You can find me on social media @Liana Boraas. I'm going to be on, if you're watching Australian Survivor, I'm going to be on with Shannon Gates this week. So look out for that. And yeah, that's all I got.
I've heard Australian Survivor is good again. They've had some great seasons, but there's like 20 episodes out already.
It's a lot. Yeah, you can talk to Rob about the dangers of binge watching a lot of TV all at once. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can like watch on 1.5 speed. It's fine.
Yeah, like I'll start watching Australian Survivor, and then tomorrow morning I'll update you on what happened on Australian Survivor instead of Big Brother, because I feel like I've got to choose.
Yeah.
I want to watch it. I do. Maybe I'll find the time.
Yeah, or save it for the BB off season, or when we're down to like Final Four and it's super boring.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and I will see you next time.